Hi everybody, welcome to another makeover, and in today's video I'm going to be working with this beautiful dresser. It's almost solid oak. The top and the sides of the dresser are solid oak and the drawers are particle board with oak veneer. My first idea was to add the base and the legs and lift it up a little bit, but I don't know, I like it the way it is. I just want to get rid of this yellowish outdated color and then we'll see. The dresser is in pretty good shape and it's well built. The only thing, this watermark, but it's easy to get rid of. Normally I would start from cleaning, but the person I bought the dresser from, she cleaned it before she sold it. So it's ready to work. And I can't remove the hardware because it's glued in there, and I think they used something like epoxy glue because it's sitting in there pretty tight, and there's no way I can remove this handle. First I tried to scrape an old finish, but it was inconvenient because the way the wood grain was, it was hard to scrape. So I jumped to stripping and I used my favorite gel stripper circa 1850. I let the stripper sit for about 5 minutes and it seemed like nothing was really happening. I added more stripper and I used the brass wire brush. It did work, but it took a little bit longer than I expected. And it felt like the top coat on the drawers was thin, that's why I decided to try sanding. I started with 100 grit sandpaper, then I moved to 150, and I finished with 220. I'm done with the drawers here, all sanded. It's time to sand the top. I already have it tested, and it's polyurethane and my stripper. It takes lots of time to work. So sanding it is. I started with 100 grit sandpaper because usually with polyurethane, the lower grit sandpaper doesn't work for me. The finish on the top of the dresser was much thicker than it was on the drawers, and while I was sanding, I realized that it would take me tons of time. That is why I decided to give my stripper one more chance. I let it sit for a bit longer, about 15 minutes, and this time it worked. I strip at least one or two coats of the old finish. My stripper softened the top coat, and the rest of it I was able to scrape. And then I sanded the top, and again I went from lower to higher grit. I started with 120 grit because I still had some finish deep in the wood grain, in that oak wood grain. Then I went to 150 and finished with 220. The finish on the sides of the dresser is much thinner than even on the drawers, so I'm going to be sanding it. And here I have a scrap board, it's a hole. I disassembled an old shelving unit, like it was very old, and I had two boards. And I think I'm gonna use it and I'm gonna build the base for this dresser and legs. I wanted to build the base and I need this part, the sides, to be a little bit shorter. I measured everything and I'm going to make a cut. Good luck. Surprise, surprise here. I thought that that piece was solid oak, but so it happens, it's not. As a person who worked for 10 years at a humongous woodworking company, I worked as a sales manager, but anyways, I had to know and I saw all manufacturing process of different boards. I can tell you that this is a very good quality of chipboard. It is very heavy and it almost like MDF quality. Meanwhile, I had something happen off camera. I used my table saw outside and I used my husband's help and I cut the board I showed you before into smaller pieces. Because the boards were too thin to make the legs out of them, I decided to glue two boards together. I never glued the board together, so I don't know how much glue I need, but just think this is enough. I clamped the boards and I put some weights on it just in case, and I let them dry. After about 36 hours, I decided that that's enough time and I can cut the legs. I squared up the boards first so I didn't have to worry about it, and then I started measuring the legs. The bottom part of the leg I cut with the miter saw because I needed to be very straight. And the other sides I cut with the jigsaw. And then I used this leg as a template for the other three legs. And because I didn't use a solid piece of wood but glued two boards together, I decided to add some dowels to the legs just in case to prevent any splitting. And then I built this simple base out of four boards I cut before. Once the glue dried, I centered the legs. I don't have a Japanese saw, so to center the extended dowels, I used my sander and a 100 grit sandpaper. I also cut the little piece I was going to use as a trim for the bottom part of the dresser. There we go, that's where I put this trim. I could have used the base I built as the bottom part, but the sides and the top they were 1.25 inches, and the boards I used to build the base they were 3/4. I didn't have a thicker boards, I didn't want to buy anything because I like repurposing and recycling, so it was easier for me just to make this little trim. One of the legs has this little gap, which I don't like. It glued, like glued, but here's, I think the boards were a little bit different thickness. So I want to try to fix this with epoxy. I mixed some sawdust with the 2 parts epoxy glue, and that was my first time I tried that as a wood filler. I applied it and I let it dry for about half an hour while I was staining the drawers. And I really liked how it turned out, and I will use it again definitely. And my favorite part, working with the colors, here I mixed two paint washes. They pretty much mix of brown, white and green paint, but one of them is more like on the beige pinkish side and the other one more on green side. And I'm gonna apply first this one, second this one, and here I have bare water-based wood stain in the color Special Walnut, and I'm going to apply this one after those two. First, I applied my pink paint wash to get rid of this yellow undertone. Once my pink paint wash dried, I applied the green paint wash. And once the gray paint was dried, I applied my dark walnut water-based wood stain. First, I covered the whole surface, and then I added more wood stain here and there, trying to create that uneven look. And I repeated exactly the same steps to other 5 drawers and to the body of the dresser. It was time to assemble the base and the legs, but before that I stained the legs the same way I stained the drawers. First I measured and I marked the spots where all 4 legs were going to be on the base. Then I drilled the holes so I could assemble the legs. I think 2 holes would be enough, but just in case I decided to make 4. To secure the legs in their places before I put the screws in, I used the CA glue and I sprayed some activator. I attached all 4 legs and then I flipped the base upside down. And I added more screws on this side, just in case. And then I attached my base to the dresser. As a top coat for this dresser, I'm using Rubio Monocoat. There's 2 parts, part A and part B, and I have to mix them together in 3:1 ratio. I applied Rubio to the top first and I let it dry over the night. I couldn't get into the drawer spools with my sandpaper and with paint wash, so I decided just to paint inside. I didn't have the shade of gray paint that would match the color of the dresser, so I mixed one. I used the green one and I added some brown, and there we go. While my paint was drying, I applied the top coat. To add some contrast and to enhance the wood grain, I applied some dark wax inside the drawer spools. I also sealed the legs with some Rubio off camera, and we are done here. Let me remind you what that dresser looked before, and here's how it looks now. Thank you so much for watching, for all your comments, likes, and subscriptions. That means a lot to me. And see you next Thursday.